So, how would we recognise lifelong learners? The people that stand out for me are the people that are curious, they ask questions, and they challenge assumptions. So, think about it when you're in a meeting. And you'll often find the people that are the quite thoughtful leaders. They won't speak immediately. What they'll tend to do is sit back, listen, and they'll always come up with, I think, very interesting questions of the group or the speaker. Another way to recognise lifelong learners is these people create cultures that amplify learning. And what I mean by that, there's an enormous amount of research that's going around at the moment, which is about organisational learning. There's the three circles that you can see in front of you. This for me is the one slide on culture, organisational culture, and it's the combination of behaviours, beliefs, and decisions. Let's look at behaviours. That's how the leaders behave within an organisation. What are the norms? How do they communicate? Do they communicate in town halls? Do they communicate online, etc.? The other thing is that, again, take note of this in this whole idea about leaders are learners, is how they make decisions. How leaders or indeed organisations make decisions. Are they speedy? Are they inclusive? Do they get inputs from diverse groups of people? Do they have very clear disciplines in the way in which they set up their meetings? For example, an elementary thought, do they have agendas before a meeting is commenced? The third and final point about culture is that it's all about the beliefs, what the company is purpose, what it's set up to do, what are its strategic priorities, have its business models changed over a period in time. And the important point there is that the last point that's made on that slide, which is vision, values, and mission, if you like. They are in this order. First off, which is not on that slide, one is a purpose. What is the higher purpose that the organisation is set up to do? What's its vision? That's the vision into the future. Then there's the values. That is the, if you like, in the middle, that's the glue that binds the vision and the mission. And then finally, what's the mission of the company? And that is all about what they do right now, what their competence is. So just to kind of cap this first part off, this is a quote that I received from a professor many years ago. He talked about those who can do, those who excel teach. And I would encourage you to teach, because when you need to know quite a lot about a topic before you teach it. It gives you an enormous amount of reserve power. And when you get to teach things, it sets up a different dynamic within the organisation. I do believe that leaders, certainly C-suite leaders, need to teach. They need to carve some time out of their days to teach, to play back, to invest back into the company. Speaking of that point, learning from teaching hospitals, and I've studied teaching hospitals throughout the world. Shoalhaven Hospital is one, which is a hernia hospital, say for example in Ontario in Canada. The Cleveland Clinic, which is an incredible hospital in the US, is a couple of common themes that stick out for me, which might be relevant in terms of this topic that we're talking about today, is that they treat patients. Teaching hospitals treat patients and they teach residents. If you ever want to get an operation done, my encouragement would be to seek out a teaching hospital. Why? Because they do an enormous amount of research and they thoroughly teach their residents. And that, I guess, the point that we're making there with regard to your organisation is that I do think it's incumbent upon leaders to, again, as I've said before, is to play back into the organisation, to invest back into the organisation, to teach its staff. Another point to be made here about teaching hospitals, and certainly my research on this point, is that failures are dissected for learning, not blame. And so, isn't it true that we learn rather a lot from our failures, not necessarily from our positive strengths? And I think that's a really important point to be made, and something that I think that teaching hospitals do extremely well, which I think that we could pick up on as a reference point, if you like, in our organisations. And again, to cap this point off, learning is the skill that makes all other leadership capabilities possible. And that, I believe, is, or I'd encourage you to think about, is look at your leadership role, carve out some time for your people, because it's largely a leadership role is a people role. Let's close this conversation off with a couple of learnings surrounding lifelong learning. First point is that my encouragement is to stay current. What I've had in the past, and it's come up for debate in many of these conversations that I've had, is a notion of reverse mentoring. That is to say that as leaders, they get, as they get more experience, they get more removed from the organisation. Wouldn't that be true? And what I've found with an incredible amount of leaders that I've been involved with recently is that they have actively sought out a reverse mentor. Some organisations that I've researched have people that they kind of second people to teach them. Some companies have 25-year-olds or 28-year-olds who actually mentor the leader, reverse mentor the leader. And equally, the leader can mentor the person that is working with them very closely. In other words, it grows them up. My encouragement as you move into your leadership ranks is don't cling to yesterday's solution for tomorrow's problems. And Einstein had a bit of a point of view about this as well. And so I recommend that you look at your organisation and also actively input learning, intelligence within the organisation. I've had worked with companies who've got separate intelligence units who are responsible for kind of putting together, or they put together a repository and they feed that information back into the organisation at regular intervals. The final point I want to make is I'll leave you with this quote. The more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. It certainly scans. And that's by Dr. Seuss, who you may remember as the author of many children's books, one being The Cat in the Hat. And so he's certainly gone somewhat a long way. So I'll leave you with that quote, and I do encourage you to think very deeply about becoming lifelong learners.